Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips.
Hello everybody and welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. My name is Dr. Lesley and I welcome you to the show today. We have a really special show. We've actually got some guests on this evening and I'm really looking forward to talking to them. And before I introduce them, I'll just remind you that we're broadcasting live from civl.ca and we are on 101.7 FM, broadcasting from the University of the Fraser Valley. And if this is your first time tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth, this is a talk radio show, and we talk every week about metaphysics and spirituality, and what we're hoping to do is uplift you and inspire you and help expand your consciousness. And we love to take your calls, so normally the call-in for the studio is 604-504-7441, extension 4142. And you can also email us your questions. And actually, this evening we were having some technical difficulties, which is why the show started a bit late. So today we'll be taking your emails instead. So you can email us at info@drlesleyphillips.com. And Lesley Phillips is spelled LesleyPhillips. And I'll read that out as we go forward. Anyway, it's my absolute pleasure today to introduce you to our guests. And I have a question for you. What happens when two passionate writer-artists fall in love and decide to make a life together? Well, the answer is an award-winning novel, One Great Year by Rene DeFazio and Tamara Veitch, is what happens. So I'm just going to introduce you a little bit to their book and to them, and then we will have a fascinating discussion, I'm sure. So One Great Year, it is, and I've read this book, and I have to say it is absolutely fantastic. It is the best book that I have read in a really long time. And I'll just read you a couple of sentences, and then I'm sure that Tamara and Rene can fill us in on more about it. So as the world descends from a golden age into darkness and brutality, Marcus has been reincarnated on an exhausting number of times. Selected to become an emissary is his duty to protect the world's most sacred, long-standing secrets. So Rene, by the way, is an actor, a screenwriter and a producer, and he's from Vancouver, and he's had many, many film and television roles to his credit. And the other interesting thing about Rene is he spent many years backpacking and filming. So he's had all sorts of adventures all from all around the world, and he used those experiences to help him create this book. And his partner is Tamara, and she's a writer and an artist and a mother. And she has a degree in English and psychology, and she also has a mural painting business. So welcome, Tamara and Rene. It's so fantastic to have you on the show.
Thank you, Dr. Lesley. We are thrilled to be joining you tonight.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You know, and for any of the people out there listening, to give you an idea about this book, if you're familiar with any of Richard Bach's books, like Illusions and so on, or even the Celestine Prophecy, we're talking here about a novel that is very rich with metaphysical truths about the nature of reality and so forth. But anyway, enough of me. Perhaps you could give us a bit more information about the book.
Well, when we initially started writing, we did not know that it was going to take 3.5 years of researching and writing to actually put out the final edition of One Great Year. But what happened for us was Rene had a wonderful, brilliant idea for a screenplay, and he held on to that little screenplay for 15 years until he met me.
Wow, I guess he was meant to wait for you before starting it.
Yeah, it was kind of going to be my swan song. I had hoped to turn it into a major film, in hopes of being approached to make that major film, but that never happened. So it sat there, and I just kind of waited and bided my time. And when Tam and I met, I pitched it to her, and the very next day we started writing One Great Year.
That's fantastic. And actually, I was going to ask you about that, because it must be quite interesting for two people to write a book together. So how did you manage that process? Who did what in the writing of this book?
Well, there was lots of wine and lots of whining. We actually both have our particular skill set. Tam is an amazing writer, and that, kudos to her, because she took my ideas, which were not easy, and made them palatable to the human ear.
Well, and I have to say, I've been writing my whole life and hoping to write a brilliant novel, but what was lacking for me was the creativity and the vision that Rene has. He blows me away every day, and we're writing book 2, and he is blowing me away again. Lesley, in the intro you mentioned the metaphysical truths that are layered all throughout One Great Year, and Rene was adamant that we had to be as true to our version of reality, or how we think the universe might actually work, based on all the research, all the science, all the stories and philosophies from around the world. Together we are a mountain. It really does feel like we were brought together with great purpose to and gifted something to share with the world. So we're super grateful and humble in that.
Well, that's fantastic. And just for information to the listeners, why did you call it One Great Year? I think I know why, but I guess...
Well, the One Great Year is it's a natural phenomena, and it occurs when the Earth spins one time on its wobble. That wobble is called precession of the equinox. It takes 26,000 years. It is actually written in 31 ancient civilizations around the world, when people only lived to 50 years old. And they had an understanding of this galactic cycle, this 26,000-year cycle. In India, it's called the Yuga cycle. In the Mayan calendar, it's called the Grand cycle. And the Greeks called it, actually Plato, one of the characters in our book, called it the Great Year. And it's believed that within this galactic cycle, there's a rise and fall of human consciousness.
So that rise and fall is a lot like the seasons of year for us here, and it starts in a golden age, this divine time where we have the understanding of oneness, where we don't have that illusion of separation, and we understand at a quantum level that our energies are connected. And through the golden age, it goes into a silver age, where we start to lose some of that, into a bronze age, and then into the dark ages where we are now. And as Rene mentioned, 31 ancient civilizations knew about this great year cycle and wrote about it and told stories about it. So that is the paradigm. That's the basis for our book.
And how did you choose? Because, this book goes through the reincarnations of the hero over this 26,000-year cycle. How did you choose which eras of history to include in your book? Because I'm sure there's so many different ones that you could have selected.
That's a great question, Lesley. We basically, what did we want to see? What did we want to experience in terms of what lifetimes we would like to visit? And that's kind of what we went with. We also stuck to real historical characters. And because there's a trinity of characters within our book, we had to find within history that trinity, and we wanted to do ones that people were fully aware of.
And I want to add, just because I'm the more whimsical of the two of us, and I kind of go toward the airy-fairy a bit more, is they found us. There was so much synchronicity in the researching of these stories, and when we would look for certain things, they would come up over and over and over again and prove themselves to be, this is where we should give our attention. This is the rabbit hole we should go down to find our information. And they would just fit like a glove.
Mm-hmm.
And that being said, when we started writing it, our main character is 13,000 years old. So we asked the question, what would a 13,000-year-old man know that the rest of us do not? And as we started to do our research, as we started to go into, astrophysics and the quantum world and trying to find something that we found information that kind of got woven through all of these people's lives throughout history. And they've left clues. So if this consciousness thing is real, and we started off at a heightened state and declined into losing our consciousness, they were going to be aware that was going to happen. And they would have left clues for us to discover in our time of awakening. And they did. They left them all over the world. And once we found those clues, it became really apparent which way to go after that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's absolutely fascinating. And I assume in the book that you're writing now, you'll be visiting some different periods in history and some different places.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. I think what we're doing now is surprising even us. It's been 2 years now that we've been working on book 2, and we had some inkling of certain aspects of where it was going to go, but what we've discovered, what we've learned in the past 2 years since first publishing One Great Year, is that when you don't have preconceived notions, when you stay open to having things change before your eyes, they will, and they do, and they're fascinating. So we're really excited about where it's going.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I enjoyed very much about One Great Year, and you tell me if I've got this right, but I believe the book starts in the time of Atlantis with the destruction of Atlantis. And
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. It does. And initially, you probably noticed that we called it Adatala right off the beginning, and that was a name that was used in ancient times, referring to Atlantis.
Yeah, we researched where the name Atlantis came from, and apparently that was a misconception. And I think the oldest known reference to it is out of India, and there they call it Aditala.
Atitala.
And that's how we came up with the name Aditala.
Yeah. And there are various lakes and so on around Central America, I believe, that have a very similar name to Atlantis, which even today...
Sorry?
Pardon?
Well, I missed that, Lesley. Sorry.
Oh, I said I've noticed that there are some places in Central America that still have they have similar names to that.
Yeah,
and there's so many legends in South America. The Viracocha were said to be tall, blonde, thin, ancient, people that gave them their wisdom. So there's, and those are stories that are echoed around the world, that there were people like that in Africa, in parts of Egypt. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the lifetimes that we venture into in the book is Tiwanaku in ancient Bolivia. And that name, Tiwanaku, has no reference in any of their language. And actually, the closest reference that they have is on the other side of the Atlantic. So that that word alone has no reference in any of their ancient languages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not defined or has any meaning. So it came from somewhere.
Now, one of the things that really struck me when I was reading it, and this is, I feel that this book has the power to heal and transform every single person that's reading it. Now, I loved the book, But the very first part, the section on Atlantis, was tough going for me. Not because of the way that the book was written or the story or anything, but because it was bringing up so much of my Atlantean past life stuff that I was having to heal myself and process it as I went through that first section of the book. And I've actually spoken to other people who've read this book that had the same experience as that Atlantean section, it's almost like it's helping us to bring ourselves into present time and to, go over our part in, of course, the Atlantean civilization was over many thousands and thousands of years. But I wondered whether you'd heard any other sort of anecdotes about people having experiences like that it's bringing up their past life recall and so forth.
We've actually heard that a lot. And if you read some of the reviews that people have written into Amazon.com, a lot of them are saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, you're telling my story is something we're often told, and I can't tell you how many people have come to us and said, "How did you get it so right? You got it so right. That's how I remember it, and that's what I saw." And to us, that's astounding because it didn't come in form of memory for us at all. It really did come through a creative process. So it was, it's fantastic when we get that kind of feedback, and we're so glad that it's touching people the way it touched us.
Yeah, so on the one hand, there's the sort of more desk-like research that you did, where you're able to verify information and find old documentation and read old spiritual texts. But then on the other hand, there's this very ancient period of history where there really isn't too much information about. And so I guess what you're saying is you just opened yourself up to the creative flow, and that's how you wrote that part of the book.
That's exactly right. We found that, through, and this is probably going to sound a little out there, but through meditation, we started to experience meditation and opened ourselves up to learning what it is we're supposed to be writing. And when we got stuck, when there was moments that we didn't know where to go with the story, we would meditate, and that information would come into us. And then you would get it in the form of a picture or a thought or a word, and we'd look it up, and lo and behold, there was the information we needed.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know that process because that's exactly how I wrote my book. And I think that there's an opening there for somebody to teach these writers with writer's block how to unblock themselves, because it's totally the way. Get your intellect out of the way, get yourself into a meditative state, and the information just flows.
Well, I love that you mentioned writer's block there, because writer's block it has to be logically just a result of ego. It has to be the result of believing you're the one creating.
Right.
And when you take your ego and yourself out of the process, and they used to talk about the muse. The muse is just creative inspiration, and it is, that outside energy coming through. So, to tap into the muse, you just believe it exists, and you stop thinking you're the creator, and magic, absolute magic.
And what we've learned, interestingly enough, is that there's this information paradox, and they've proven that information can never be lost. So we're all energy, and all that information is circling around the Earth, and I guess it's referred to as the Akashic records.
Right.
It's referred to a lot of things, quantum field, and if you become open with the right intention, that information can be tapped into.
Absolutely, it can. Absolutely,
yeah. And it doesn't come. I think it doesn't come as always as giant epiphanies and lightning bolts, and I think that's where people can miss it sometimes. It's very subtle. It's your own voice in your head.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some grand Moses on the mountain type burning bush. It is really. For most of the time when we were working, it is a gentle voice of my own telling me this, and me going, I didn't just think that. I wasn't just conjuring that. That has some weight. Let's go look that up.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've learned is a lot of people have referenced it as your higher self.
Right. Yes.
helping you
Yeah.
here in this physical plane.
Absolutely. That's actually what I believe about my book, was that it was written by my higher self, and then I just got my ego out of the way to bring it through.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we found too.
Yeah. So, without compromising any surprises that the reader might have when they read your book, what are some of the key messages in the book? What are the things that you want people to know?
The themes became so utterly clear for us by the time we finished. And one of the main themes is the theme of oneness, that we are all connected, that there is that separation is illusion, that we are not separate from one another on an energetic level, on any level. Another one is that our choices matter, that what we do, what we choose, how we behave, what we say, our intentions, our thoughts, our actions, all matter, and they create our reality, and they create where we go from here and what we have to deal with.
I really like that one.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us all take more responsibility for our lives and our actions.
And there's upsides and downsides of that, because then we can play the blame game, and we can, we can be really hard on others in our lives and hard on ourselves. Or you can say, I'm going to do better. I can create better. I'm in charge of doing more. And that is so empowering and freeing, and it brings you peace to know that the flow is going to happen anyway, and if I join in with it, I'm not going to be struggling all the time.
Right. So now, obviously, a big theme in this book is reincarnation. Yes. And, we actually did a show on past lives the other week, and one of the questions that we had somebody phoned in and they asked, why don't we remember our past lives? So I gave them my version of the answer. What's yours? Why don't we remember our past lives?
Oh, our main character, Marcus, is a testament to the answer to this question. If we are here to learn lessons, and we are bogged down with every other lesson, loss, mistake, thought, intention we've ever had, we can't focus. Part of learning just the little nugget, just that little piece of gold that we're here to learn, is to be able to focus on that and isolate on that and move through that experience. And I truly believe that as we're meant to understand more of the other pieces, they do come.
Right. Actually, very close to the answer I gave. It's a matter of capacity and focus, really. So now the other question I had, and after this one, I think we'll go to a really short break, and that is that I've been doing a little experiment for the last, year or so, where people can ask me a question and get the answer for free, and I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people now. And, of course, the common questions are, well, one of the very common questions actually is about relationships and soulmates. And so there's a relationship, isn't there, that is in your book between Marcus the hero and
Darren.
Right, that is just such a relationship. And so, again, my question is, what's your definition of what is a soulmate and also a soul group?
Oh, boy. Okay. A soul group would be the energies that we are traveling through these experiences with, these incarnations with,
right.
That we have contracts with, that we agree with to have our lessons and to teach lessons. So it's like your team. It's your teammates going through these different ages, and because people, souls, are all at different levels. There's all kinds of things going on, and you have your group at different levels that help you. Soulmates is far more complicated to me than a soul group. I'm pretty clear about soul groups. Soulmates for me, they're not always the lover in your life. They might be somebody who really it comes out in a hard negative way in your life. I don't know, Rene, what do you think?
Yeah, it could be somebody that challenges you. I mean, sometimes the ironic thing about this is that if we go through life without any challenges, we don't grow. People don't choose to continue to grow when everything's working out. It's only when we're faced with some kind of obstacle that we are forced to reevaluate our lives. And sometimes that's what a soulmate does. They come into your life to complicate it, in order for you to break out of your paradigm and grow.
Mm-hmm. But they will be they will be a profoundly important energy. They will be a profoundly important catalyst in some way in your life. And I mean, fortunately for me, my writing partner and the love of my life happens to be my soulmate this time, so I'm pretty stoked.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking this is working out for us this time.
Yeah. No, I love your answer because, I agree with your answer 100%. And I love to bust some of the myths that are out there. And, people do have this idea that soulmates is this perfect love match. And it's absolutely not. It's a soul that's here to help you to grow, just as you said. Anyway, we're going to go to the break. And you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley on CIVL on 101.7 FM. We're going to take a short break and then we will be back with Tamara and Rene. Welcome back, everybody, to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley, and we are broadcasting live from CIVL and on 101.7 FM. If you're just tuning in, we're having a fantastic conversation with the authors of One Great Year, Tamara and Rene. And just before the break, we were talking about soulmates. And I actually do have a couple of email questions about soulmates. And so, unfortunately, we're not taking calls today, people, because we had some technical problems. But you can send an email to info@drlesleyphillips.com. And now, normally what I do when we have some questions is I go into my little trance and give them an answer that way. But I think we'll just continue our discussion about soulmates. And so here's somebody with a question about it. So it says they met someone at a meditation retreat, and there were signs and predictions before that she was going to meet her twin flame. And she felt a powerful soul connection as soon as they met, and was able to speak really freely with this person, was very, very comfortable. And she felt an opening in her heart and a really strong resonance in her heart, except nothing romantic happened. And, they went their separate ways, but they kept in touch. And she actually told him how she felt about him and about all of these predictions. And he said he only was interested in her as a friend. And so she's saying she understands that not all twin flame connections are romantic, and she's okay with that, yet she feels he wasn't being honest. Is this a platonic twin flame connection brought to me for my growth, but not to be pursued as a relationship? Well, actually, and this lady's name is Dee, I think we kind of answered that before the break, but is there anything else that you'd like to add, Tamara or Rene, about the twin flame or soulmate thing?
Well, I'll tell you something that's been happening to us in terms of our journey. We have found that as you become awakened, and it sounds like Dee is doing her work, and she's going to meditation and counseling and learning how to become awake. I don't know what level of awakened she is, but what we have found as you start to become awakened and you create this bond with other people that are becoming aware. And it's human instinct to take that to a lower chakra level. Because it feels so good, it feels so beautiful, and it is. It's a heightened way of experiencing life and connecting. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your situation, but we tend to take that to our sexual chakra. And that's where it feels like it should be more. We should be connecting more. And I think that can be a bit of a trap.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think that we've learned, in the last while that when you look into somebody's eyes and they are resonating and vibrating at the same level that you are, there is a comfort and a familiarity and a connection that, before those experiences in your life, you never felt that except for romantic love or, kind of a lust thing was the nearly most powerful connection. So what we realize is that we have a lot of friends in our lives now that feel like that, really familiar, comfortable, and it is totally platonic, and it doesn't have, those other aspects. But it's a weird thing to traverse through when it first begins.
Yeah, I think you actually gave an excellent answer there to Dee. I mean, I know from my own work, I find very much that people confuse their heart chakra with their sacral chakra or their sexual chakra. And it is, we're so programmed to confuse sexual love with unconditional love. And most people on the planet today are operating from their lower chakras. And so, it's sort of exactly what you were saying, really. So that's great. So let me see, what else can we talk about? Oh, I know, I've got a really juicy question here. Is there any autobiographical material in this book?
Definitely. We wrote the book because, for a few reasons, we wanted to live a purpose-filled lives. Our characters have very purpose-filled lives. We wanted to make the world a better place somehow by sharing this information, and that's the role of our characters in the world. And we have a lot of fun together. We love to travel. Rene's traveled all over the world. So we're not young. We were in our 40s writing this. So we've taken everything we've ever learned and put our pieces of heart and soul in this, what we know.
Yeah, I remember when traveling around the world, and say I was in Ireland, and I would be meditating in a dolmen. And at this point in my life, I didn't meditate. I just heard a little voice in my head, you need to meditate in this dolmen. So I sat in this dolmen in the middle of a field. I had to climb up a hill. It was drizzling rain. I was by myself in the middle of nowhere meditating in this dolmen. And I found the same thing when I was in Egypt, and I was in the Great Pyramid, and I'm looking in the walls, and I'm going, I'm supposed to be getting something here, and I'm not getting anything. I'm looking at rocks. But as my life progressed and I reached the point we are now, then all of that information that I was receiving culminated into one great year. Mm-hmm. And then everything made sense after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was like the puzzle pieces, You're given all these puzzle pieces all over. And many of the puzzle pieces in our book is us. And how we have felt and things we have lived through, or just having a lot of life experiences to draw on for the emotions, for all that part. That's all autobiographical.
And what about in terms of past lives? As you were going on this journey and you were writing this book, which includes the theme of reincarnation and being reborn, did either of you become aware of any of your own past lives?
It's funny. I think we both have a comment on this front. There is a whole storyline that was written that didn't make One Great Year. And during the writing of that storyline, I became very aware of a past life memory, and I had not been. It's not something that I knew about, but I had been obsessed with a certain period. I don't want to give it away because we may use it, but I had been obsessed with a certain period in history as a kid, grade 6, 7 to 10, and I'd read everything I could about it. And then when I was doing the research for the book, I had been looking at pictures for about 2 hours, and all of a sudden one should have been benign picture flashed up on the screen, and I fell apart, because for me it was profound, and I knew that it touched something way deeper and older than I had known, and all of a sudden everything made sense. Why I'd been obsessed with that time period, why I had dreamt in a different language as a child, and it all fell together. So yeah, that was my experience with that. Rene has one, I think.
For me, unfortunately, I don't have that past life experience. I wish I had some form of magic that occurred to me that, that just hasn't happened for me. For me, it's been seeking out the information, and I almost needed proof. So I went looking for that proof. And, I looked in, when I was looking at reincarnation, I looked into
Dr. Ian
Stevenson's work, and he studied. Now, he was a scientist, and he didn't believe in reincarnation, but he took it up as a study for 40 years, and he documented 2,500 that he believes proven cases of reincarnation. And when you look into those case studies, and you find little 3-year-old boys that go to the village elder and say, "I was murdered in my past life, and I can tell you where my body is," and then they go and they dig up the body, and then he goes, "I can tell you where the murder weapon is," and they dig up the murder weapon is, and then he says, "I can tell you the man who did it," and then the man admits to doing it.
Wow.
These are he was hit with an axe across the neck, and he had a birthmark, and there seems to be this running concept of having a birthmark where you experience some kind of blunt trauma in a past life.
Yes, yeah, I've encountered that before too.
So those kinds of things I found really interesting. I also looked into Robert Lanza's work, and Robert Lanza's considered one of the 3 top scientists in the world today. He's been compared to Albert Einstein, sorry. And he was the main scientist behind the stem cell research. He did the sheep dolly, and that was all of his stuff. And then he had an epiphany. He started looking, because he says the problem with science is that everybody sticks to their one form of science.
One discipline, yes.
And so what he did was he started branching out into astrophysics and into the quantum realm, and had the same epiphany that Tam and I had in writing this book. And he wrote a book called Biocentrism, and he says within that book that he has no doubt that we are all consciousness and that we continue on after death. And he lays that all out in his book.
So talking about expanding consciousness, how has this experience of creating this book expanded your consciousness? How have you grown as a result? What's the one biggest thing or the biggest way that you have grown from this experience?
Well, and this is something we've been sharing, because we've been talking right across North America and presenting this information to people. And the one thing that we can share with people, that when you get this, is suffering ends. All your worries and stresses and all the little things that make you suffer, you see them for what they truly are, and they dissipate away.
Yeah, it's only the minute that we acknowledge that all of the suffering in our life is caused by ego and attachment, and you can step outside any situation and see that that it's transient, that we're riding vehicles, that it is not forever, and your soul is untouched. Your spirit, your inner energy is untouched. It's just learning that truth, and that it really does offer the freedom not to be a worrier, not to be, living in that place where you're so identifying with your human self that you forget that you're divine, that you've got this, eternal being inside you that doesn't identify with that.
Yeah, well, that's phenomenal. That's a world-changing realization.
Oh, it's so great. If people could live in that all the time,
yes.
it would be a very different world when people understand that.
It would. So,
and that was one of the biggest catalysts for us in writing the book, because as we were researching it, trying to find what that 13,000-year-old man would know that the rest of us do not, we came upon this information. And we thought, how come the whole world is not talking about this? And then it became very important to Tamara and I to incorporate that information into One Great Year. But we didn't want to preach. We're not going. You can't convert or change people unless they want to seek out the answers. And we're okay with that because everybody's on a different level.
Yeah, and on a different path.
On a different path. So we threw that information within this fantastic adventure love story. So if you want to just be thoroughly entertained, then you're going to be thoroughly entertained. If you want something more, well, then that's there too.
Right. But you have to seek out the information, like Rene said, and we put a full bibliography and footnotes at the end of our book, and we have a ton of information on our website at onegreatyear.com. And that website is just full of YouTube videos and blogs and media links to other interviews, and it is a wealth of information for people. So, if you want it, it's there.
It's like, what the bleep do you know that video was? How far down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess on that website, onegreatyear.com, if people want to purchase a copy of the book, that would be the place for them to head?
They can head there, or it's available at any bookstore in North America. If you walk in and ask for it, if they don't have it on the shelf, they can order it in easily. Especially, you're out in Fraser Valley. Black Bond Books in the Fraser Valley is carrying our book, and we're in Coquitlam Center until the 28th of December. There's signed copies right across from Santa on the main floor. We've been there doing signings for the last few weeks. So
there's a store there called My Package, and we're right at the front counter there, and we're there we've been there through the whole December signing books for people.
Oh, and meeting people, and it's been amazing. And we talk about looking into people's eyes and seeing your tribe, and honestly, people walk up and they speak the word consciousness, and all of a sudden the conversation changes to a whole nother realm because you could speak a different language.
Mm-hmm. And that's how we met and got together, wasn't it? The synchronicity of that shopping precinct.
That's right, the Body, Soul, and Spirit Expo.
Yeah.
We saw each other again at Coquitlam Center.
Yes, yeah. So one more question. Gosh, I lost it. It went out of my mind. It was a fun question as well. Oh, I know what it was. What is, for each of you, what's your favorite quote or scene from the book?
Well, I love that, and that's one of the questions we ask people, because, the book ventures into 4 ancient civilizations. So you get to revisit ancient Atlantis, ancient Bolivia, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, and Mongolia. And then it culminates in present day. So there's all these lifetimes, and we always ask everybody, what's your favorite lifetime? Now, for me personally, I love the Mongolian lifetime. I loved, we ventured into Shambhala, and that to me was just beautiful.
Yeah. My answer's shorter but twofold. My favorite lifetime is the ancient Bolivia, Sartania, Stonehenge Center, because she's a mother and I'm a mother, and I put so much of my own heart into that. But my favorite quote is during the Plato-Aristotle lifetime, and Aristotle asked Plato, why don't you put your name to your dialogues? Why don't you, and give them more credence in society? And Plato's answer that we gave him was, to do so would tie me to one way of thinking for the rest of my life. And I am on a journey to learn, and I'm on a journey to continue to change, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life defending the way I thought yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I have used that quote over and over and over because people constantly ask us, what religion are you? What spirituality are you? Where do you identify? And we can't be nailed down because we are in the flow. And I don't want to defend for myself for what I said yesterday for the rest of my life. I want to continue to grow and change.
And we find that, a lot of the dogma that's been written in terms of the religious dogma or spirituality dogma, ties you into one way of seeing it. And it's cyclical. It's not a linear type process. It's a cyclical process. And I think you have to be open to that.
And if we can focus on how they begin with love, they begin with compassion, they begin with gratitude. The basis for all religions ties us all together as one, and that's really where the focus, we want to focus there. So
fabulous.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing about this book I find, and it's kind of connected with what you were saying about that quote, is that it's multi-layered. Each reader is going to get different things out of it. And just like any creation, it's like giving birth to a baby, writing a book, I find anyway. So there'll be people reading your book, I'm sure, that see things in it that even you yourselves haven't perceived. So what's the most unexpected compliment or insight that you've got from one of your readers?
The most unexpected insight. Wow. Well, one of our readers, we were so blown away. He made a $18,000 donation to a charity immediately after reading this book, because somehow in understanding that choices mattered, he realized that a lot of the pain and suffering he'd inflicted on himself, a depression that had come over him, he suddenly was able to link it back to having not done something he had intended and wanted to do. So he, even though it was a hardship for him, he went and did that, and it was a huge catalyst. His happiness and his depression lifted, and his happiness changed. So that blew us away.
And that's occurred a lot. We've had people that have left jobs that they didn't like and pursued the job they've always wanted. We've had people buy a round-the-world ticket and just travel, and people that have left bad relationships. It's amazing, because I think the book is about choice, and it makes you aware of your own choices in your life, because your thoughts and your choices create your reality. And as soon as people recognize that, they start with their thoughts, and then that manifests into their reality.
Fantastic. And we're going to be wrapping up the show now. I think that's a great comment to finish on. So just one more time, for people out there listening in who would really like to get a copy of your book, and by the way, folks, this would make a fantastic Christmas present, how can they get a hold of you, and where can they get the book?
Well, you can get the book is available right across North America, and every bookstore can get it. We're also
any Black Bond Books, Warehouse Books, Coquitlam Center at My Package, right across from Santa on the main floor.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. Come back again.